Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 132. This is, this is the post-Christmas and post-New Year's episode. Yeah, I gave myself about 2 weeks off after Christmas. I think I got the last video out just before, like, Christmas Eve or something. And I was like, all right, I'm not doing diddly squat for like 2 weeks. That's my Christmas vacation. And the thing about taking like 2 weeks off is I realize, because I'm right at the tail end of that, I'm recording this on Sunday. I realize, wow, I kind of do like working. I just don't like working all the time. When I say working, I mean like making stuff. So I've kind of been taking these last 2 weeks to do. I didn't think I'd be so phlegmy. I ate some toast. I didn't think I'd be so phlegmy from that. I've just kind of been doing like hobby, like creative stuff. I painted some of my Tyranids. I worked on some Mugen. oh yeah, I talked about that last week, or whatever the last episode was. I don't even remember what I talked about on the last episode. When was that? When did that come out? Was that after I did my break thing? I feel like if... was that about a week ago? What the hell? That's crazy. Anyway. God damn. I'm gonna, like, clear my throat for a second. Yeah, it's just nothing particularly interesting. I guess I got into, like, coloring manga panels. I saw, because I've been going on this whole JoJo deep dive again. I think there was a little while there. I don't talk about it that often until recently because I've been reading the manga now, or rereading the manga. I don't talk about it that often, mostly just because there's like a month in between chapters and like the anime isn't going right now and all that stuff. But I've plunged back into the JoJo hole, and I've seen all these really cool instances of people coloring manga panels themselves, and I thought maybe that would be cool. Maybe that would be fun to do. So it's actually really easy. Really easy to do it with your photo editing software of choice. And I made like 2 different pieces that I actually like quite a bit, and it was a lot of fun. The funny thing is, I never liked coloring books as a kid, because I could never draw inside the lines, so I thought it always looked bad. But I'm kind of getting it is fun, honestly, like, take an illustration and pick out like a color scheme and stuff. Like, you laugh at like adult coloring books, but I've been doing this and I was like, this is kind of enjoyable. This is like a fun kind of process. I think I get it. I think I'm coloring book pilled now, but it's with my cool Japanese manga. Yeah, so I made 2 pieces so far. One was just the what do you even call it? Like the illustration, like the stand info sheet for Sticky Fingers, which is one of my favorite stands. Love Bruno. And then I did a page from Part 8 that I thought was cool, and then I don't know, I had the urge to I was like, I wonder if I could color that in a cool way. And I actually liked it. I liked it a lot. I like what I came up with. So that's, I don't know, another hobby. That's so, like, I remember talking to my brother one time, who's a little younger than me, and he was saying that he kind of feels like he's compelled to fill his schedule with stuff, like like very external responsibilities. Like, he's got a job, he is going to school, he's has to go to the gym and all this stuff, and I don't know, like socializing. And he said that he kind of has to do that because otherwise he's like, yeah, I just sit at home all day and I'm bored. And that was very unrelatable to me, because if I sit at home all day, I'm gonna find 100 new things to do. I'm gonna find so much stuff to do. So what did I do last night? Oh, okay. So, oh god. So, remember how like a while ago I was talking about how one of my like, wants that feel like needs, things that would be really nice, was to get like a little laptop for myself. It came in. I flexed the, hey, we don't make that. This is a zero budget operation over here at the Cellar channels. So I made full use of the holiday season and the fact that my birthday is 5 days away from Christmas. So this is just like the gift bonanza for me. And I get to be like, okay, here's all the stuff that I need. So I upgraded my PC pretty nicely, I feel like. I went from like a little, what was I using before? It was like an RX 570 or something. Some very old graphics card. I boosted that up to a 7900. Ooh. Do you know what those numbers mean? I don't really. I bumped up to from like 16 to 64 gigabytes of RAM, or is it gigabits? It's gigabytes, isn't it? Gigs, giggity of RAM, which is like, it's a relief to have like, to not have to deal with 74% of your memory being taken up because you have 2 tabs open in Firefox. That's cool. And then I got a big ass CPU cooler, because I've been using the stock cooler for forever on my CPU, and I was like, you know what? Maybe it's not normal to be running, for the CPU to be at like 85, 90 degrees when it's just running idly. So we got that all fixed up. Let me tell you, I was like, oh yeah, it's just like 3 parts. I've done this before, I've built the PC. I can put them in no problem. Man, that was not easy. That was not as simple a process as I thought. The RAM was easy. It's funny, the RAM is the easiest part, but it's also the one that I actually screwed up the most on, because I just like didn't actually click it in all the way. I don't know how I missed that. This graphics card was like, I felt like I was doing heart surgery trying to install it, because the way that my case is set up, everything kind of has to go together at a kind of a very specific, it has to fit together in a specific way. And I was running into this problem where the new GPU, so the old one fit just nicely, fit just well inside the case. The new one is like a third larger. It's a third longer than the old one. And I'm looking at it, and the way that it's set up, my power supply, it's got all these cables that come down from the bottom of it. And they are just creating a wall that it's not allowing the new GPU to fit in properly. And I can't really move the power supply because like that's the only place it can go. So I had to do some unscrewing, and so I had to do some real tight fitting. I was like a cave diver, like a spelunker, squeezing through the little cracks, trying to fit all this tech in. And then also with the CPU fan, new ones, God, they are huge, dude. The old one I was using was just, it was like a single fan thing with a heatsink at the bottom. This is 2 heatsinks and 2 fans. This baby is running cold. I also took the chance to reapply the thermal paste, which I hadn't done since I installed it. So that's I think I'm feeling just fine with my computer right now. I don't foresee any real significant upgrade besides maybe the CPU. And then I also got a little laptop for myself. So here's the thing. is I sat down with this thing for like, I did the whole setup process. Like, I'm a very high maintenance user in terms of I want to change a bunch of shit. That's why I can't use like Mac OS. I have to customize all of my shit. I have to change my my mouse. I use a custom mouse cursor. That's how much of a nerd I am. I change all the settings. I have to install a bunch of programs that I want. Just like a bunch of stuff. It took like a whole day, a whole like 6 hours of just, getting it up to where I wanted it to be for me to feel like I can do stuff on it. And let me tell you, I sat down, and I guess we can transition into this. I sat down and I was like, I want to play this game, but I kind of want to lay down. Oh no, dude. Oh, dude, I am such a bed gamer. Oh, I love laying down and playing some like retro games. Ooh, I am a bed gamer at heart, dude. So I sat down and I was like, you know what I've wanted to do for a while? I really want to play the Ultima Age of Enlightenment trilogy. I really want to play Ultimas 4 through 6 because I know I've talked them up a lot on this podcast. I know how important they are. Like, I understand how important they are to like the medium and how ambitious those games were. But I want to actually go in and like play them. But I thought first maybe it would be a good idea to get a little taste of the original trilogy. I don't know, like Age of Darkness, I think is what it's called. So that's Ultimas 1 through 3. Shocker, I know. I'm also learning how numbers work. So I went online, I found some extreme... Like, who gives a fuck if you pirate Ultima 2, dude? No one cares. Nobody cares. Richard Garriott... Oh my god, every pirated copy of Ultima 2 is a knife through Richard Garriott's chest. So I just pirated it. I just found downloads for the original 3 games. Ultima 2 didn't work. I also heard it wasn't as good as the other 2. I don't know, man. I played 1 and 3, and it was honestly a very interesting experience. I think it's kind of worth, if you're curious about old game history, I think that those games are worth playing because it's a real peer into the past, into something that's interesting. So what I mean by that, I'll start with Ultima 1. So Ultima 1 came out in like 1980 or 81. And 4 was like 85. It might have been like 82. I don't know. Was Ultima 1? What specific year was it? 81. It was 81. And that game is... It's very simple. It's really antiquated. It's kind of funny to go back and play a game from a time period where it's like, it's the early 80s. It's the second year of the decade. And we are still trying to figure out how to do Dungeons and Dragons. Man, some things never change. Some things never change. I went back, when I played all those games on the Play-Doh, the mainframe system, and you see how many of those games are just like original roguelikes and from like the 60s. And they're just trying to do Dungeons and Dragons. They're like, how do we do it? Do like a randomly generated dungeon that you explore. Everyone's just trying to do Dungeons and Dragons. I have to make a video at some point about the effect that Dungeons and Dragons has had on video games as a medium, because it's so interesting. It's almost equivalent. I'm trying to think. Is there like a single film or something or even something from like a different media? I'm really trying to rack my brain, because I don't know how, technically D&D and video games, they're both games, but I don't know how you would you put like a line of separation as in they're separate mediums? You kind of could. it gets a little fuzzy there, but I really struggle to think of an example in a different medium where one thing had so much influence on the entire art form. And Dungeons and Dragons is like, man, it all goes back to this one game and these big fucking nerds from the 80s who were just trying to recreate it. Like when I talked to Glenn Wickman in that interview I did a while ago, and he's like, yeah, we just wanted, when we made Rogue, we were just trying to make like Dungeons and Dragons, but within the limits of what was possible at the time. So Ultima 1 is kind of trying to go for a similar kind of thing, but it's hitting on like an adventuresome feeling. The premise is very simple. You got to go kill the wizard. How do you go kill the wizard? Well, first you have to complete 4 quests on 4 different continents, one for each. And it's really simple. You start out in the overworld on the map. You go to the castle. You talk to the king of that castle. He gives you the quest. You probably want to go buy some items so that you don't die immediately. And then you go to the nearest dungeon, and then you go in. You're in a little first-person dungeon crawler, and you just kill monsters and get gold, and you technically get experience. But funny enough, in the first game, experience doesn't really you don't really level up. I looked it up. You're gonna need a lot of guides. Straight up, you're gonna need a lot of guides to understand what's going on in this game. Because almost nothing is explained to you, and the menuing is extremely antiquated. When I say antiquated, I mean that there is none. You have a little feedback box, or like what is it called? You have like a little box on the side that tells you it just tells you about the world and what's happening because the graphics are so limited. Wait, I just totally lost my train of thought. Oh man, I totally lost my train of thought. That's basically how the only interface that you're getting. You're going to walk around and you're going to want to talk to someone. You don't know how to do that. How you do that? You press T. You press T to... It's called transact, which is confusing. But... but that's what you do. Everything is done with hotkeys, and there is no guide in the game. I looked at the manual. There's no guide in the manual for what the hotkeys do. You just have to look it up online. So I did. Thankfully, it's pretty simple. The number of... You don't need to know that many commands. You just kind of go adventuring. That's it. You go kill monsters, get gold, go back to town, buy better equipment. I think your level might influence what's available in the shop as well. And then you go back and then you do that until you're strong enough to actually fight the boss monster. And you try not to die. Speaking of dying, so the game, it's really funny because Ultima 1 is, once you get your head around it, it's very simple and it's even pretty easy for the most part. So one way is that there's 2 ways to regain health. One of those is via going to a king, any of the kings, and just asking him to heal you, which will cost gold. But you don't really need to do that in most cases, because if you go to a dungeon, I guess it's more so if you're in the overworld. If you go to a dungeon, kill some monsters, and then come back out, you're rewarded with health. And you can go I don't know what the max health is, but you start at 150 or something. I went and killed some monsters, took damage in the process, then came out and it's I'm at 200 something. Okay, cool. And then you just kind of keep doing that, and you can farm pretty safely until you get a string of bad luck. There's a bunch of monster spawns in the dungeon. Oops, then you die, and you know what happens when you die? You lose everything. You lose everything except your experience. The game starts you off at 150. When you respawn, you're in the overworld, you got 99 health. And food, although the food isn't really that big of an issue in this game. And then you got no gold. All of the items you had gone. You're back. You're basically naked. It's pretty brutal. And you do that a couple times, and you say, okay, I think I get the idea. I could feasibly beat it. I think I'm pretty sure progress carries over. Like if you've beaten any of the main quests, I'm pretty sure progress carries over. I could probably beat it if I spent enough time. But yeah, that's it's a game based around the grinding, number go up, do the most that I think could be done at the time with the technology. This was 81, by the way. This is pre Super Mario Brothers. We're not that far away from Pong, which is kind of fucking nuts. 2600 Pong specifically. The arcade came out in like 72. So I was like, okay, I get it. Then I went to Ultima 2 didn't work for some reason. Ultima 3 I tried, and that game is like even more brutal. You get the sense this is like kind of an old I feel like an older school mindset that like, oh, the sequel should just be harder. The sequel should just be harder in every way. And Ultima 3 is it gave me a headache. So first of all, you've graduated up from, I don't know if this was the same in 2, because again, you didn't play it. You've graduated up from just being one character to now a full party of 4. And you gotta create the character sheets for all of them, their race, class. You know what's interesting? This game actually had 3 gender options. There was male, female, and other. It's kind of interesting. Way back in like 1983 abouts, there was like an other option in a video game. Let's if this was like an edited video, I would put a little fucking like ghost of the fucking Starfield pronouns guy. And just show him Ultima 3, one of the foundational like Western RPGs, the whole medium. Yeah, Ultima 3 is like, hey, you remember how food wasn't that big? Ooh, food is important. You are always starving. Every single character has their own. Every character is a separate character. They have their own gold. They have their own inventories is more natural, but like they have their own food supplies. And after walking a couple paces, you run out of one food. And it's very similar gameplay where you leave town, go fight some monsters. There's a brand new combat style presentation. I don't know. Whenever you run into a monster on the overworld, it goes into this like little scene where you're now like on the it's like a closer up, top down view, and you control each party member in turns and select what they want to do. And man, everything is the start of this game is rough. It is rough. I didn't get past it. Your wizard doesn't have a lot of mana to cast spells. You have like a decent amount of health until an enemy drops a chest after beating them, and then you open it up and there's a bomb in the chest, and one of your party members goes from 130 health to like 10, and you're like, fuck, what am I supposed to do about that? I have a healing spell. It heals 5 health points. And it costs like half your mana to use. And then you're like, okay, well, mana regenerates just when I like wait around. Then you wait around and you've healed like maybe 30 health points back. And then by the time you've done that, you're like almost out of food. So you got to go buy food, but like you don't have enough gold. So you have to go kill but you can't kill monsters because you're like super low on health. And what am I supposed to do? It's like, it's a real like lose more kind of feeling game. Like it is a downward spiral if you get some shitty luck. I wouldn't be surprised if certain strats for this game just involve like, yeah, I'm just resetting. We're just restarting. So I kind of like finished those, and I was like, all right, that was pretty rough. Let me just check out Ultima 4. Let me check out, Quest of the Avatar. And you know what? It's kind of shocking how much of a step up 4 is from 3 in terms of a lot of things. Number one, the presentation. It's got a whole opening cutscene. This whole opening scene that kind of leads seamlessly into a character creation segment that you don't even know is actually a character creation thing. It's the game is just asking you to make a series of like this or that choices, and that decides what your class is going to be. You still have the party of 4. The food is way less, like, the food issue is way less intense. It looks a lot better. I don't know. I say a lot better. It's not like a huge step up, but I don't know. Something about it just feels a lot smoother and like a video game. I don't know. If you don't know why Ultima 4 is so important, Ultima 4 is a game that came out in 1980. Was it 4 or 5? I have to check. Were they was old Lord British pumping these out yearly? It was 85. Okay, that's what I thought. It's like, is it 84 or 85? It's 85. Ultima 4. So the first 3 Ultima games are very standard, hey, go kill the wizard games. Like, there's nothing that deep in terms of any plot or themes. There are just, we're trying to capture the feeling of adventure of being on a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And Ultima, Richard Garriott, Lord British, the creator of these series, got this like mail. He got some mail, I think from like parents or people who were basically criticizing him that like, oh, the games you make are just about going and killing monsters and they're this simple trash, whatever. They're like schlock. And he said, okay, fine. You know what? I'll make a game about things. And he made Ultima 4. So Ultima 4 is not a go kill the wizard game. In fact, in Ultima 4, there is no villain. There is no real, like, overall enemy. There are, like, monsters in it, and there are antagonistic people, but there's no, like, the goal is not to go kill a big bad guy. The goal is to become a good person. So, essentially, after the first 3 games and all the evil has been wiped out, the main evil forces that are threatening the land have been wiped out, and Lord British, who is also the king, I should do that too. I should just make the king of my world be named Tigan. It basically tasks you to become the Avatar. Not the Last Airbender, but actually kind of similar. The Avatar is like the culmination of the 4 elements and their 4 philosophies. The Avatar in Ultima is the Avatar of Virtue, who is basically the person who embodies essentially their religion. Basically, Gary came up with like a religion for this game, which is 8 is based on 8 virtues. The virtues are, and it's actually kind of interesting. There's like a whole graph of demonstrating. So essentially, the virtues are honesty, compassion, valor, justice, sacrifice, honor, spirituality, and humility. And there's this kind of interesting symbol that represents all of them together. So like the center of the symbol is spirituality, and there's like 3 circles around it, which are the things that like spring from spirituality, which are truth, love, and courage. Those are like the three like kind of trinity underneath that. And then from truth, love, and courage, all of the others are like combinations of them. So truth, love, and courage are oh yeah, no, I'm looking at the graph now. They aren't like the virtues themselves, but they represent, those are like values that come from spirituality, truth, love, and courage. And then there are like singular virtues that come from them. So honesty, honesty comes from truth, compassion comes from love, and valor comes from courage. And then there's a bunch of the others are like combinations, which are justice is truth and love, sacrifice is love and courage, honor is truth and courage, spirituality is all truth, love, and courage, and then humility is like the negative space because it's considered the root of all virtue. I guess I misread it at first. Spirituality is like all three. Yeah, it's like this kind of interesting kind of interesting actual like philosophy. And the idea is that these are kind of like your stats in the game. Well, they're not your, you do have like literal more traditional RPG stats, but you also have like acts that you can perform to fulfill all of these things so that you can become the embodiment of them. So like for instance, let's see, so for honesty, when purchasing, I'm just reading off the Wikipedia page. When purchasing goods from blind merchants, the player is required to enter the amount of gold they wish to pay. Although the player has the option of paying less than the merchant has asked for, this will mark the player as dishonest. Stealing gold from chests in towns, villages, and castles will also penalize the player. There's another thing like valor. Valor is displayed by the player defeating enemies in combat and not fleeing. This means that when retreat is necessary, the player should be the last party member to leave the field of battle. One of them, what was one of them? What was it? Honor? One of them I remember is like, so if you damage an enemy enough, they might start fleeing. And if you go and chase them down to kill them and finish them off, that's considered unvirtuous. Is that the word? Unvirtuous? Something like that. Yeah, the it's a really interesting like premise for a game, and once you become like you're considered like the embodiment of those things, like you beat the game, like that's the end of the game. Well, there's like an ending. I know the ending. It's a really cool game. I don't know if you care about like the ending of it, but essentially it's like a weird isekai. Like you get sent into this fantasy world from our world, and then at the end you're back home. And you go home and all your stuff has been stolen while you were away, and you're just kind of like not bothered by it because you're like an enlightened person now, and it's kind of sick. And the reason it's called the Age of Enlightenment trilogy is that each of the games in it, 4, 5, and 6, each explored morality in a different way. So I know the plots of all of them. So Ultima 5 is about essentially how while you're gone, Lord British gets usurped by his like attendant, and his or like one of his he basically gets betrayed and like locked, like imprisoned in some place, and it's taken up by this new politician guy, and he essentially takes all of the virtues, which are like the laws of the land, and he turns them into this draconian doctrine. So now it's like, oh, instead of charity being like an optional thing that like demonstrating it as a virtue, you are obligated to like you are like obligated to give people things that you own, or you'll be taken from you forcibly. If you steal things, they'll cut your hand off, kind of rule. So essentially, it's taking it's about these very like spiritual, philosophical virtues of how you should live your life, and them being codified into law and completely corrupted by government, which I think is funny. It's interesting. And then the sixth one I know is about essentially discovering there's this like whole realm of gargoyles, and the gargoyles basically live in hell, and they have a completely inverted sense of morality, and to them all the things you think are evil are actually good. And so it's like, oh, okay, well now there's like a whole counter philosophy and that challenges your understanding of like what is actually good and moral, and how much of that is based off of just what the society around you or what you've been told. And it's really interesting. He was really cooking with these games. That whole like Ultima 4 through 7, which I'd also like to play 7 at some point, real neat, real cool. Like when I talk about them being important, one of the reasons I believe that is just because like, man, like no one was really doing stuff like that. It's so impressive, because you know, I don't need a game to be like the deepest thing ever, hitting like a bunch of really unique themes and all that. I am a very like gameplay guy, you know. I think that a game that has really innovative gameplay is just as valid as something that's trying to quote unquote tell an important story. But here you have like an example where you kind of hit this idea of those two things not being separate, that you can express a theme through some kind of gameplay system. And it might be a little bit primitive and a little literal, you know, but it's no one was doing this stuff. A lot of people don't even do that stuff today, you know? And that's why I think those games are worth talking about, even if you don't find them that fun or you find them kind of cumbersome. I think they're like super important from like an artistic perspective. Like, you know, you might not find there's a lot of music that I don't really enjoy, that I don't really care for, but I like it. Well, I don't what am I saying? I don't really care for it, but I can understand why it's important to the medium, to the art form of music and to culture. So, like, yeah, you know, appreciating it. Maybe I should do a video on Ultima. Maybe I should. Yeah, or something like that. And speaking of videos, I was experimenting around with YouTube Shorts. Because I was sitting around and I was like, I wonder how shorts would do. It was something I was considering for a while, and like I've heard a lot of back and forth stuff, and I was like, you know, why don't I just try an experiment? So the experiment right now is I took a bunch of existing videos and I kind of cut little highlights or parts of the intros, like little teaser things for them. Excuse me. And man, that was super easy to do. I made like 5 of those in like a night. And then I was like, maybe I could do like something more original to make something specifically uniquely as a short. So I made one about the video game crash being a myth, or the common myth of the video game crash. And man, that did really well. That did really well for my channel, and I got like 10 subscribers off of it. Off of like just one little short that got like 6,000 views. Like, oh shit. They get crazy viewership, and they're so short that like, they're shorts, you know. They're so short that the retention is fairly good on them. I might like just put one of those out from now on, like every time I do a video, or if I have a little topic to talk about, Because, like, there's things that I wanted to make. I've had the idea to make videos on, but I feel like I don't know how I would work it into a video. Or I don't know how I could make a video out of it. I would have to work it into another, like a larger premise or something like that, or I don't know. I watched this interview with Gerald from Core Gaming, who, if you don't know, Core Gaming is this guy who makes videos about fighting games for people, I would say, that are equally enjoyable for people who don't know anything about fighting games. And one of his best videos, I think, it's called Analysis: Why Button Mashing Doesn't Work. And what's awesome about it is that it basically takes this question or this observation that a lot of people who don't know much about the genre often make of it. Like, oh, it's just a button masher kind of thing. You know, you're just mashing buttons. Let me tell you, I was playing Guilty Gear Strive with Kat while she was visiting. That girl was mashing buttons. Obviously, in like the fighting game community, we use the phrase mashing, but the way we use it is very different from the way that a lot of people actually just mash on the fucking controller. It's crazy. So this is like this common observation that a lot of people who are kind of outsiders to the genre might have. And it's essentially like, oh, it's challenging this preconceived notion. Does it not work? Why don't I click on this video to find out? And then what the video actually is, it does start with that premise. But the whole concept of why button mashing doesn't work, every single point ties back into it. The video is actually just a really easy to understand breakdown of almost universal fighting game concepts. Like, he goes over frame data, he goes over things like counter hits, he goes over offense and defense. There's like, it's really in depth, and it's really easy to understand. That's how I learned what like advantage is and stuff like that, like frame advantage, and being in block stun and hit stun and all that, and the startup and recovery frame, and all. It's really interesting. And if you don't know anything about fighting games, the presentation is so good. Like, it's a great video. And I saw this interview that he did with, I believe, like Sajam, and he was basically saying that, oh, what was it? My God, I was building up to this whole point and I forgot about it. He was basically saying that it's a video that hooks you in with this common question, and then it's actually about something else. It's not misleading, it's just, if you were to make a video titled Basic Fighting Game Concepts, it wouldn't be that interesting to people. But when you present it in the form of this thing that's like actually, and because like everything, it's not like a lie, you know, every single point of the video, again, goes back to why button mashing would be bad in a certain in most situations. It's like using one thing as a front to actually talk about something else that is related. And I think about that in terms, like, if I couldn't make a video directly about, say, so one thing that I find really interesting, I talked about it a while ago on the podcast, was the trend of anti-Japanese sentiment in the gaming community around, like, the 7th gen, like, roughly 2007-ish, through, like, 2013, 14, 15, rounds about. And I think it's like a really interesting period of time, and something that a lot of people don't like to talk about, and kind of just forgot, to be honest. I think they just forgot about it. But there's a lot of interesting cultural and market stuff that was happening around that time to create that sentiment. And it's kind of, you know, it's kind of ugly. And it's not that pleasant If I just made a video about like, why was everyone so racist or something like that. I don't know if that's like how you present that kind of a topic to people. But if I was to maybe like frame that as in some other kind of way, maybe something like about like what happened to Japanese games in 2007 or something, in the PS3 era, something like that, something snappier, some kind of snappier title. Because it's weird, because it was unfair. It definitely got to a point where it was unfair, the prejudgment, but there were things that a lot of Japanese developers were doing wrong at that point. It wasn't just like some propagandistic thing. There was a lot of like flops around that time. But like the scope of them and the scale of them, I think got kind of overblown. It got kind of sloganized, where people know something more by just people know the narrative is way more important than the facts of something. You can look at that point in time, and even if you were there, you can say you can point out all you want how good all these different Japanese games coming out at the time were. But if the narrative is that Japanese games are outdated and antiquated and they need to get with the times and they're awkward and all that, and they have bad stories and they're just so weird, wacky Japan, you're never going to overcome that. So one of those things that I might have talked about this back on the Game Awards episode is that like No Man's Sky is always going to be the game that was bad and then they worked on it a lot and now it's good. That game is never... Maybe over the course of years and years and years, maybe if that new, Light No Fire game comes out and it's bad, there might be another critical re-examination of No Man's Sky. I could see that happening. But for the time being, and for years now, No Man's Sky has been the game that was bad, and then they worked on it, and now it's good, even though I don't know anyone who's ever played it. And have you played it? Do you know anyone who's played it? I feel like no one's played the game, but everyone thinks of it like that because of that one internet historian video. Because of that one video with like 5 million views. How many views does that thing have? How many views? It has, back in 2020, it has, holy fuck. It has 23 million views. Holy shit. That's more people than have played the game. Legit, that's not even like a knock against the game like I was kind of joking about a second ago. That's legit, like, how the fuck? That is so many more people that have ever played that game. Know this story about it. The narrative is bigger than the facts. And I haven't played it, right? It could be really good. It could be really good. It could also be kind of boring. I've heard some scant criticism of the game that like, it's just kind of boring, or it's not for everyone, But that sentiment is never going to be overshadowed by the dominant narrative. If you can control the narrative around something, you kind of control the facts. That's where, that saying, if you say a lie enough times, it becomes true. That, it's not literally true, although in some cases it might manifest itself because of people's, preconceived notions of something. It's more so that just becomes, it might as well be true if you lie about it enough. Yeah, and that's why people like me, funny enough, 5,000 subscriber YouTube channel, have a lot of power over people. Like when I think the term influencer, I hate it, but it is pretty accurate. Because as an entertainer and a storyteller and a whatever you want to call it, you have the unique ability to create a narrative. You have the unique ability to present reality in whichever way you'd like, and it could be as accurate or as, biased as you want. As you can put as much of a spin on it as you'd like, and that creates a lot of you can really sway people's opinions on things, because the truth is, most people do not have the time or the energy or the care, the motivation to go through something and actually form an opinion about it themselves. Everyone's guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. You know how many, we offload a lot of the work of forming opinions about things to other people. There's so many, just everything. I mean, pieces of media, historical events, politics, and we essentially just go to quote unquote experts for opinions on things. There's that joke, oh, nice opinion. Did your favorite YouTuber give it to you? I'm doing that right now. And I don't think about that. But I wonder, I wonder how many things I've talked about on this podcast and how many opinions I've shared on things that have just filled in the void for someone else, someone else's opinion. Did I phrase that properly? How many people have listened to this podcast? The 25 or so of you who listen regularly, and have heard about something you've never thought about and didn't really know anything about. And now what I said about it is just the only thing you really have to say about it. And that's now your opinion or your one source of information about it. I try to be cognizant of that and try to preface things with well, I mean, I've heard of this or that or something like that. I try not to double down on things that I don't really know about. But it's easy. It's really easy to do. It's really easy to take someone's very strongly stated opinion and just take that as your own. And it's kind of I guess it's always been a thing, but when everyone gets a microphone, it becomes way more dangerous. I remember I saw this video, this little clip of Wayne Knight. And he was talking about the actor Wayne Knight, who does not look like a guy named Wayne Knight, Anyway. And he's talking about how he met Michael Crichton, obviously, Jurassic Park. He met Michael Crichton, and he asked him about, this is probably in the mid to late 90s, he asked him what he thought about the internet and the access to information and all that, because Crichton's obviously a very scientific guy. And Crichton said that he actually didn't like it. He actually had a very grim take on the effects of the internet. And Knight asks him why. And Crichton said that when you're constantly bombarded with information and other people's thoughts and opinions, it becomes very hard to form ones of your own. And moments where you are by yourself and you don't have, external information coming in about something, and you can just kind of think about it on your own, are where the original thoughts come from. And so the internet kind of has this danger of, what's the word? There's this danger of oversaturating, I guess. Oversaturating our exposure to opinions. That's the other thing. What was I talking about with Kat the other day? We were talking about something, and oh man, we were talking about some comedy or something like that. and we were talking. Oh man, I didn't even write this down in my notes. I guess I could talk about this next. We talked about MTV's Downtown, which was a series that was aired in like 1990, like the mid 90s or the late 90s. Something. Hang on, when did that air? MTV Downtown. 1999. It was an animated sitcom about a bunch of young, either like around their 20s, young people living in New York. And we watched it together because it has this goth girl she really likes in it. And it's a cool show, but one of the things that we noticed is there's a lot of, there a couple points in time, there's these little like topical jokes of the time. And I was thinking, because we were talking about it, and the show only ever had one season, and it's never been re-released on like a DVD or anything like that. And we were thinking about like, because Clone High has kind of a similar, I think she mentioned Downtown is getting a bit of a resurgence in popularity. Just like an underground interest in it. It's a cool show. Also, the whole thing is on YouTube. It's a neat show. And she was mentioning that, what would be the possibility? We're talking about the potential for it to be brought back like Clone High was for a second season. And I think that it's a very topical feeling show to the time and the culture. And I don't know how well that would play today. Simply because, like, there's just way too much of that shit. You don't have to go anywhere to find topical information. Excuse me. I think about stuff like, okay, so in Warhammer 40k, which, mind you, started in the 80s, the late 80s. The leader of the orcs, his name is Gazgul, or he's like one of the biggest orc war bosses. But his name is Gazgul, but his real name is Mag Uruk Thraka. And his nickname is the Iron Orc. So, not a terribly subtle reference to Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady. And I see that, and it's like pretty funny, I think that's funny now. I see that, and I'm thinking, if they were to do something like that today, I would just roll my eyes at it. I'd just sigh. How much fucking Donald Trump humor is just, oh my fucking God, really? And I imagine back then it was probably a lot more novel and less, like, not really eye-rolling, because that was all part of a kind of a subculture. Ooh, do I get to talk about this? I'm going to talk about something that I mentioned like way back on the Game Awards live stream. I was talking to the chat about this. All right, so I have this theory about mainstream culture and the way that it has changed over the years. So, all right. So, because I think we were talking about like what is even considered mainstream anymore. And I was thinking, that's a good point. I was thinking about this on the bus. I call this the wall versus fog model or theory. The wall versus fog theory of mainstream culture. Or just culture in general. So previously, in previous decades, even like 15 to 20 years ago, a lot of culture, and this is from like a US perspective, so, take it with a grain of salt if you're from other places, but at least, here, a lot of culture was divided by things that were, in some sense, kind of abstract, but also there was like hard walls and there were soft walls. So hard walls would be things like access. So for instance, if you liked anime in the 1980s, you're really going to have to commit to that. You really got to go out of your way to find or import VHSs. They probably don't have subtitles. I mean, God, back, they would have these anime clubs in the 80s and the really early 90s where they would have the original VHSs of like Evangelion or something, some series, and they wouldn't have subtitles. They would have printed out packets of the translated script, and they would read through the packet and follow along with the dialogue. Or they would literally burn their own, they would take the VHS and they would like acid burn subtitles onto the VHS reel. Like, that's not accessible. that is you have to be really into it. A lot of stuff, without an internet or a very fleshed out internet, early internet, there's not a lot of access to information about what kind of stuff. Like nowadays, I can go online, I can pirate near anything I want. Was what it feels like if I wanted to. If it's not available through official channels, we have all these streaming services. There's so many ways to find whatever kind of media or hobby thing that you want, and there's ways to connect with people. Back then, it's like I gotta like go find a club, or there's no one in your town or your area who's into that. Like it's rough. Like there's nothing you can really do about it. Also, speaking of like stuff like anime. Another pretty hard barrier, the language barrier. Stuff nowadays, I mean, Christ, it feels like it's easier to find subtitled anime illegally than it is to find the original anime, unsubtitled illegally. That kind of thing. There are so many ways, there's so many more like translations of things all around the world. There's like automatic translators that if you really want, you can feed stuff through. Like it's way easier to access stuff from all around the globe and stuff way from the past. In general, obviously there's huge blind spots and stuff like that and stuff that's missing or lost. But honestly, compared to something like, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it's way easier now. And then there's kind of these kind of soft walls, which I would say are more abstract things, like cultural things. Social stigma is probably like the biggest one. Oh, you're into that, you're a big nerd, and now you don't have any friends. I touched on this in like the Geek Club video, but one thing I kind of noted about that kind of older sort of nerd culture is that one of the reasons I think people were so hardcore into that stuff, and they were so obsessive about the details and all this really nerdy stuff, like the dates and the, people get really, really anal about it, is because if you're gonna like lose all your friends because you're into Star Trek, you might as well go all the way. Like, what's the point in just going halfway on it? You just need to, yeah, like there were there were these like divisions and these really separate groups of people, right? Distribution channels is another one. I would say that's more of a hard barrier. If it's not on TV, if it's not on a channel you own, it's just hard to find. If it's not playing in the theaters, if it's not like at the local record shop or the local, the mainstream radio, it's just hard to hear that stuff. It's hard to come into contact with it. Now, I think that the internet has leveled the playing field for media in a way that's unprecedented. And it's shifted over from what I call the hard, like the walls. So like previously, so the wall, you could imagine like a gated, a walled off city. You live in this city and it's walled off. If you want to go outside the city, you gotta leave the gates into unknown territory. Things go in and out, but through these specific gates. Now there's no walls, or the walls are very minor. And instead it's just a vast foggy expanse, like the fog of war from like an RTS or something like that. Now it's like, I think the separations between people and culture and hobbies and all that are more so just by the wealth of stuff that's out there. Now it's less like, if you tell someone about something and they are not into it, it isn't as much, oh, what, you're into that? That's weird. It's more so like, that's weird because it's like different. You like, science fiction or fantasy novels. Now it's more like, oh, I've never heard of that. Like you talk to someone about a TV show and they're like, oh, what streaming service is that on? Like, I don't, where is that on? You're like an artist, you're like, oh, are they on Spotify? Oh, no, they're not. Oh, I haven't. I guess that kind of hits the distribution thing, but it's more like, it's so accessible now. Stuff is so accessible that the separations between people are more like, I just haven't gone over there. Like I live on the internet, I live here in the cyber world, and constantly, very often, I come into contact with these little subcultures and these whole spaces on the internet that are so foreign to me, but are huge. Excuse me. Like, and I enjoy that feeling. There's this YouTuber, she's a commentary YouTuber. Her name is Casey Ayanzo, and I watch her videos every now and again. She has this very soft, calm voice that's like just really easy to listen to in the background. And she's interested in a lot of things that I am not interested. She follows a lot of like, it's fun. It's like celebrity stan Twitter type. I don't know, gossip. I don't know. It's not like a real vapid feel. It's not like the kind of vapid feeling that you'd probably associate with a lot of people who follow that stuff. It's just kind of like funny commentating on it in this very like really gentle way. And I think she's pretty funny. And her videos give me this experience where she'll be talking about something and she'll go like, yeah, so this song came out and it was like last summer. It's probably like we all know it's one of the biggest songs of the whole summer. And I was just like, I have never heard of this. I don't know who any of these people are. There's some like TikTok people or something like that. And I am so out of the loop. And she's talking about it so matter-of-factly, and I go read the comments and everyone knows what she's talking about, that I'm like, oh, this is like when I talk about fighting games on my channel. Oh, this is the other side of that interaction. And I like that. I like getting a peer into something that I have no idea about. And I don't really care to learn that much more of. I just like the mystery. I just like, it's like when Miyazaki read Lord of the Rings and he only had like he only understood like 60% of it because of the language barrier. That's how I feel watching those videos, And I find that like, I enjoy that feeling, but that's what I'm talking about. That area, that city, that country is over there shrouded in fog, and I have to leave my little hovel and I can't see 30 feet in front of me, because it's so thick. And that's how I feel like a lot of modern culture is. It's this fog barrier as opposed to these hard walls that are much more like coated into culture. So I think talking about mainstream culture is weird because it's like, I feel like even if you were into niche things back in the day, I didn't live back then, so maybe someone who's older than me can correct me. You still came into contact frequently with like you were kind of forced to put up with most popular music and stuff like that, or popular films. Nowadays, I don't have to pay attention to like, I don't know. I feel like I'm not forced to pay attention to almost anything because I can just choose, because all my consumption is on the internet. I can just kind of choose what I engage with. So I feel like the idea of mainstream culture is, I don't know if it's the same anymore. I don't even know if it's applicable everywhere. There's things that are pretty, like, you just kind of have to go, yeah, I guess most people know about that. You know, that person or that thing. But it's, here in my mouth. It's a lot less definitive, I feel like, than in previous decades. Correct me if I'm right. If I'm totally off base and you're like 40 years old listening to this, I'd really like to hear, because I was thinking about this a lot. I think about it a lot. Well, not regularly, but back at that time, like a little while ago. That's my wall versus fog theory. Anyway, Jesus Christ. I have like a couple other things I want to talk about. I've just been rambling for an hour. So yeah, I turned 22 on New Year's Day. I am a New Year's baby, if you weren't aware, which is why I do a live stream every year. I had the pleasure of having my beloved Katrina on with me. And we played Class of '09. So Class of '09 is a visual novel that I saw like a couple clips of. I now realize that I was seeing clips of the sequel without knowing. I didn't even know there was a sequel. And I was like, I have to play this, so I bought it. And it is... So Class of '09 is this weird... I think it's worth playing. It's really fucked up. It's just the okay, so here's the idea of Class of '09. The main character is female Patrick Bateman. Her name is Nicole. The first thing she tells you is that she's a sociopath. She's going into high school. They've moved like a dozen times. She keeps getting expelled. Her mom's had 8 divorces. And it's 2007, baby. We are the class of 2009. You know, that's when we're going to graduate. And I don't even know how to it's a very standard visual novel type deal. You go through you go through the story, you're presented with choices, you see what happens. But Class of '09 is telling a story about, so it says on the Steam page, it's not a dating sim, it's a rejection sim. That's like very catchy. It's also like not really, I don't think that's very too accurate. Class of '09 is a game about, how do I describe this? Like the pond scum of culture. Everyone in the game like fucking sucks. Like they're horrible people. The most awful, shallow, cruel teenagers you have ever seen. Who don't give a fuck about other people. Or are just kind of strange or bad in some kind of way. And it just hits you with it. And it's not afraid to play all of it for comedy. Like we did one route, like one of the first things that happened was we went to like photography class. And the teacher asked us to stay afterwards because we were rude to him. And he invited us to go on a photo shoot. And we thought it was going to turn into like a molester thing. And no, it turns out he's not actually a child molester. He's a white nationalist. And he's trying to form the white pride party at school. And it gets so... And that's like one... There's like a couple different outcomes to that storyline. The whole game is stuff like that. It starts out like, okay, this is just like really just, it starts out as mainly just being a comedy. And the more you unravel and the more endings that you get, there's kind of this interesting story going on about people who are like really damaged and reflect that outwards to be terrible to justify being horrible to other people. There's 2 characters who I feel like are the different sides of the same coin, and both of them refuse to understand the other one. And it's kind of this weird character study of how someone becomes a horrible person and the psychology behind why they keep that up and why they might just not care. And the game's pretty funny, to be honest. If you have a dark and twisted sense of humor, like me, yeah, or you can just watch the live stream that we did, because we beat the whole game. And now I want to play the sequel, which apparently it's like a midquel, because it takes place technically during the events of the first game. It's just like a more in-depth look at, I think, like the senior year of Nicole's high school life. Yeah, it was a lot more substantial than I was assuming. And we had a good time with it. On a completely different note, Arthur Christmas. So maybe I should have talked about this. I forgot to talk about this in the episode back in December, but around Christmas time we watched Arthur Christmas, which is the last excuse me. It's the last 3D animated Aardman production. That was a couple... I forget when that came out. It was like 2015, 2014, something like that. Yeah, that's a really good movie. Arthur Christmas. It's really good. We're kind of missing... I'm a couple weeks late on this. But it's a Christmas movie that's about... It's essentially the main characters are all part of the Santa Claus family. So there's the Santa Claus, there's his father, Grand Santa, and his wife, Mrs. Claus. And then his two sons. I believe her name's Steve. One is named Steven, and the other one is Arthur. Arthur's our main character. Steven is like, I think, the older one, and he's the next in line to inherit the title of Santa Claus. And he's bringing it into the 21st century. He's got a whole like fucking Pentagon command center to pull off Christmas. And it's kind of this funny. It's like there's a lot of fun stuff in it, which I think is I think Christmas movies about like Santa Claus and all that should have fun Christmas stuff in them. Controversial opinion, I know, but there's a lot of, I don't know. The opening sequence of the movie is this whole like how they do Christmas, and it's like all the elves, they're like fucking Navy SEALs sliding into kids' houses and putting presents under. They have all these like gadgets and stuff, and it's fun. Fun, creative, a lot of visual stuff. And then Arthur is kind of like a bumbling, kind of like, ooh, and his job is to answer the letters at the North Pole. And the main conflict of the film is that there's a little girl who wants a bike, and because of just kind of a random, just kind of like happenstance, the bike doesn't get picked up by the sleigh. It just, it's still there at the facility. And he's like, oh my God, this is horrible. And it was the one child they missed on Christmas. So Arthur basically convinces his Grand Santa to take the old sled, because they have this ridiculous like Santa spaceship with like stealth cloaking and shit. It's funny. He's like, let's take the old sleigh out and go deliver the present to that little girl, even though Arthur knows very little about the real world. He hasn't really been outside the North Pole. And they go on a little adventure together. And it's just really, I don't know, it's really good. I think the characters are really strong. There's one thing what I really liked about it, I guess, is this spoilers? Do you care? I don't know. One thing I really liked about it was how you've basically got these four different characters. There's Arthur, his brother, Santa, and Grand Santa. And at the start, Arthur is very clearly painted as the screw up of the group. You know, everyone else is like either competent or have proven themselves in some way. And Arthur is just kind of like a bumbling, he's just a bumbler. And as the movie goes on and you learn more about the characters, you kind of realize that every single one of them kind of feels like they're failing in some way, which is it's really interesting. Like, there's this whole dynamic where, okay, yeah, Arthur has kind of he's trying to prove himself. Like, he has this sort of low self-esteem. He's kind of a coward. He's always been sort of just like a klutz. But his brother Steve is all concerned. Like, when you kind of get these sort of hints that he's kind of like, he feels like he's kind of inferior because he feels like he has to rely on modern technology when previously, you know, his father and his grandfather were able to do Christmas without all of that and just relied on, you know, like a sleigh pulled by a reindeer. And he almost feels like he's kind of trying to compensate for his own lack of ability or his lack of competence with like technology and efficiency and data. And almost, you kind of get this, like, he's almost aware that he's a little bit cold and overly analytic, and he doesn't really know how to feel about it. But like, he doesn't quite like love being like that, but he doesn't really know what else to do. And then there's like current Santa, who is a little insecure that he feels like he's kind of like lost his touch a little bit, or he feels a little like he's trying to cling on to every Santa is supposed to do 70 years, and then they retire and they give it up to their successor. Santa this is his 70th year, and he's like, let's go for another one. He's fucking Ruth Bader Ginsburging it. And he kind of has these little hints that he feels a bit like he sort of lost his touch, or he's trying to cling on to the role because he feels like he's sort of, you know, losing his involvement with the holiday. He's trying to cling on to his life, basically. He's been Santa for 70 years. And then you have Grand Santa, who is doing this whole thing. Eventually you find out just to prove it to the others, to the rest of the family, that he's still got it, and he's not just some crazy old coot. And the way that these like 4 different family members all kind of eventually reconcile at the end is really satisfying. And it's this actually fairly subtle story. There's lots of fun Christmas stuff and adventures and things like that going on, but there's like this very subtle story going on about how each of these 4 characters feels about themselves and the lessons that they learn and how they end up at the end. And it's cool. It's good. And there's lots of fun little gags. There's this little elf character who I love. She's like from the rapping division, and she's obsessed with rapping stuff. She's obsessed with rapping gifts. She does this like hyper speed rapping. She has this little like, I think, Scottish accent or something. It's very cute. There's these weird little lines that are like, okay, this is a British film. Like at this, like when Arthur is convincing his grandfather to go get this, like well, he's not convincing him. He's bringing it up to him to see if there's anything they can do about getting the present to the little girl, because Santa himself is already retired. But everyone's basically shut down for the night, and Grand Santa is saying like, oh, we can make it over there in time. Something like that. And Arthur says like, what? You know, Steve said it would be impossible. And Grand Santa says, they used to say it was impossible to teach women to read. You just got like blindsided by that. Like, what the fuck? There's just these weird little lines. Like at one point, one of the elves asks Santa, like, "Are children real or are they just antimatter? Do they really exist or are they antimatter?" He's like a child truther. It's like these weird, funny little lines. It has that little kind of British Aardman spunk in there. And it's just a nice, and by the end, you just feel good. It's just a nice, feel-good Christmas movie. You feel nice after watching it. I would totally recommend it if you've got family or you've got young kids or something. I think that it's kind of overlooked. I think it deserves a lot more praise. Or It deserves a lot more attention than I think it's gotten. I remember it being well received at the time, but it definitely it's a really good movie, and a really good Christmas movie as well. On a completely different note, we watched Blazing Saddles. Blazing Saddles is a series. What a fuck series? Everyone knows what Blazing Saddles is. Apparently, Kat had never seen it, which I thought was interesting because she loves cowboys and she loves westerns, and it's like a classic movie. It's a comedy. It's like a Mel Brooks movie. I was just surprised she hadn't seen it, but she'd only seen little bits and pieces of it. So we actually sat down and watched the whole thing, and it's from like the 70s, right? And wow. It is a great movie. It is a really good movie. It holds up very well. It's still really funny. I think one thing that really caught us off guard. Well, number one, I think the language. At the time, I know that even like at the time, that language is probably fucking like, oh my god, dude? In like the first minute, we've got like 3 different reclaimed slurs getting dropped. They're just like, oh, okay, we're getting hit with that right off the bat. We thought it was funny. Like, this is not a knocking it. It's just like, wow. It's really hard to imagine someone just dropping a hard R in a movie today. There's that kind of like, oh, they couldn't make this today. You could make this today. It would just be in a different context, It would be releasing in a different context. But God, it is a really funny fucking movie. I haven't seen it since I was a kid. I watched it when I was a kid. I think we got onto the whole thing because we got on the topic of watching it because I was reading this thread about childhood fictional crushes or something. And every time I read something about that, or I hear people talk about it, I'm like, man, I never really had one of those, funny enough. I never really had ooh, that character makes me, I got a crush on that fictional character or something like that. Which is weird, when I was like a kid. And I was just, every time it comes, I try to rack my brain to think, were there any? Like, nothing really comes to mind. Part of that, I think, was because I was kind of relentlessly teased for being kind of nerdy by some of my family. And one thing that people that some of my family would do is they would ask me, they'd be like, do you think she's pretty? And I always felt like they were mocking me. Like if there was like a celebrity or something, I'd be like, no. So I think I had this spiteful asexuality as a kid. And I didn't want to admit that anyone anywhere was attractive. Because I felt like it was just there to mock me. Or people would just use it to make fun of me. I think that's one of the reasons. And then I had this epiphany moment. Finally, I remember, holy shit, Madeline Kahn's character from Blazing Saddles. If you've never seen it, she plays Lily von Stupp, who's like this burlesque dancer at like the local what is it, tavern, or it's like a performance, it's something like that. And And I remember that character just as like at like 7 years old, I was like, ooh. Okay, I think that did some stuff to me. And I brought it up to Kat because I was like, oh my god, I finally had this this buried memory. And she was like, oh, I've never seen Blazing Saddles. So we watched it. And yeah, I don't know how much there is to say about it. One thing I notice now watching it again is that I feel like the first third of the movie is maybe the best. And then afterwards it gets like, it's kind of weird. I feel like the first third of the movie has like a really good flow to it up until the point he gets to the town, and then it sort of feels like the movie changes a little bit. Not bad, just I kind of feel like the first act, I suppose, it feels like things are happening very organically, and the gags and the jokes are coming very naturally as a result. They're just consequences of the things that are happening, or little things that are thrown in here and there. After that, it sort of feels like scenes are written in to have, like, based around the jokes, as opposed to, you know, what is his name? Headley, the villain, looks out of his window down to like there's like an executioner's platform, and there's a guy. He's gonna hang this guy and his horse, and the guy is on the horse, and they both have nooses around their necks. And that's just a joke that just kind of happens, you know? It sort of happens as part of the scene. And then later on, it kind of feels like this scene is here to tell a joke as opposed to the joke being a part of the scene. Does that make sense? Forced is maybe I don't know if that's super accurate, but it feels a little more like that. And it helps that the jokes are still funny. It just feels like there's a shift in momentum after he gets to the town, and they're like, what do we do now? What do we fill the middle of this movie with? But it's a great movie. It's still totally worth going back to. I finally, it's funny. I think one of the reasons I was so knocked off my feet by the language and some of the stuff in it is because I always watched it on TV. I always watched television edits, so I don't think I ever even realized that I think they must have always censored those like the slurs and stuff. So that was just, oh my God, I totally forgot. I haven't heard this before. Yeah, Blazing Saddles is good. And I think to end this off, I mentioned Downtown earlier. MTV's Downtown. I do kind of want to talk about it because I think it is an interesting show. So MTV's Downtown ran for one season in 1999. It's this animated series about a group of like young people living in New York, and the main character is this kind of nerdy guy. Well, he is a nerdy guy who works at like a copy shop. And back when we had those still exist. And it's really just like a sitcom where every episode something different is going on. There's usually like two plot lines happening. He's got like some friends, and he's got some friends. He's got a sister and her friend, and some people who just kind of like, from hang out. And there's a whole little cast of pretty likable characters. And it has this I would describe it as being a very Gen X kind of show. It's a show that's in the same vein that something like Rugrats is. There's this very particular look to a lot of like Gen X counterculture punk stuff, which is, it's this really scratchy, kind of ugly looking artwork, I guess. Animated stuff specifically. I think of stuff like, I guess Fritz the Cat fits into that a bit. I'm not sure if that counts technically as Gen X, but this it's got that look to it. Everything's a little kind of funky and weird and a little lumpy or angular. That kind of like that kind of built-in ugliness or misshapen quality to a lot of the characters and the environments. it has, apparently the way that it was written was the actors didn't, the show is actually mostly improv from what I understand. They might have had like some things that were written in specifically, but it was basically they just got an outline of what the scenes were about and probably like how the conversations were supposed to go. But then they just kind of ad-libbed everything, and you totally feel it. It has this cool conversational flow to it where a character will be talking and there's these really natural kind of responses in that kind of way where oftentimes a character, they'll ask something, they'll like be like, hey, what's that? And then the person will get like 3 words in, and the person who asked the question will be like, oh, cool. And kind of talking over them almost, or talking under them, maybe. Like, and that's just such a natural conversational thing you never realize, but you just go, oh, okay, well, yeah. Like just to tell someone that you're paying attention, or kind of like what emotion you're meeting them with. And that kind of stuff just happens all the time over the show. And it has a fairly tight pacing, I would say. It never feels like, okay, we're just listening to a podcast. Who would want to listen to a podcast of just some guy talking and rambling all the time for fucking an hour and a half, 2 hours? But it's cool. There's like a lot. All the characters they mesh in a very fun, natural way. Everyone bounces off of each other really well, which is partially, the literal way that it was recorded with everything being improv. But also just their personalities are balanced. Alex is this kind of, he's somewhat well-rounded, but he is definitely like a nerd. He's kind of shy. His sister is kind of this like, this like dumb teenager. All of her friends are kind of like that in some way. Alex, the main character, has these friends who are he has this one friend who's this I don't know if they said they were like childhood friends or something, but she's always wearing this big ass sweater. She's this kind of chubby girl, and they've been friends for forever. And she's always wearing these big sweaters with oversized sleeves, which I feel I dress like that too. And she's kind of like I don't know. The kind of person who's like, she thinks of herself as being an outsider, and she kind of embraces that, but I don't know. Like a lot of the characters feel very real and grounded in a way. Like they have these very clear personalities, but they're never one note. They have these kind of impressive amount of layers to them where I feel like I know how they would react in a situation. But I don't know. I like the cast a lot the more that I think about it. I'm struggling to find the words exactly to understand how. I can't even say written, because they're not written. That might be part of it. That might be why it's kind of hard to pin down the exact personalities of the characters, because it's kind of coming from a lot of the little nuances are technically coming from the actors, which is neat. And the episodes are there's some fun episodes. There's like one I think that's really good. We both liked it a lot, where they go to like a Comic Con. Basically, they go to like a nerdy convention where like the Undertaker he has a booth and he's signing photos, and they're on like some of the characters have they're like a comic. They're selling like rare comics. There's like this action figure that Alex really wants to buy that he's looking for, and it's this peek into like old convention culture, which is pretty cool because it feels very authentic. A lot of things feels very authentic in this show. It feels authentic, which is neat from my perspective, because there is a shift. Like in that Geek Love video, remember? There's like a post 2012 Avengers shift where that stuff became like normal. And I think the culture of going to like a convention or something, or the culture of being into that stuff changed a lot. And I've only ever really been around for the stuff, for that stuff, When I went to school, all the jocks were into Naruto kind of thing, right? Like it was very equalized. But here they're talking about like, oh, this is like a guy who can't stop making Star Trek references, and I don't know, like that's the other thing, very very Gen X. What was I thinking about? Yeah, I don't know. It's like a pretty regularly pretty entertaining, funny show. It has this kind of laid back pacing to it. We were talking about, if they were going to bring this back, because it's got this new underground following. If they were going to bring it back, here's what I think. Okay, one of two things. One is you do it with the same characters, but I think it has to be well, there's a couple ways you could approach it. You can do it with the same characters, but it should either be like taking place at the same time. Like it should still be taking place in like the 90s. Or you could do with them in the modern day, now as like 40-year-olds or something. You could do like some of them have kids. That would be funny. That would be interesting. And the maybe the main characters are their kids being young people. Let's see, if you're like 20 and like around the 90s, if you're in your 20s, and now it's like, yeah, I mean, it's like been 30 years. You could have a kid who's about, I don't know, like, yeah, about like 20, maybe 19 or 20. Does that make sense? I'm so bad at math. Something like that. Or I would want it, because here's I think part of the appeal is that it's about a group of young people who are all just kind of going about their daily lives. And it's very focused on that. There's like almost no characters in the show who are over 30, except maybe Goat. I don't know how old he's supposed to be. If you were to do it today, I think it would be cool to have a show about, the modern day version of this. I think that's a fun idea. It's a fun idea, and there's not that many shows, I feel. I guess there's like Friends. I don't know how indicative Friends is of 90s culture. I've never seen Friends. So I don't know. Let me know in the comments. If you were like in your 20s during 1997, I don't know. Let me know which is more accurate. Downtown or MTV's Downtown or Friends. You can go watch all of Downtown on YouTube for free. I think they got re-uploaded in 4K by someone, somehow, somewhere. So that's cool. We watched the old like 240p uploads of them that someone recorded off their VHS. So that's that's nice. Yeah, it's a cool show. I wish there was something kind of similar to it now. Or if it got brought back. I think there's a lot that you could do with a concept like that. Do I have anything else to talk about? Not really. I'm still making my way through part 8. I'm at the like halfway point of part 8. I'm in the vitamin C arc, and I remember it being really good, but I forgot that there's like 10 straight uninterrupted chapters. Like 2 full volumes. 2.5 volumes-ish, right? And for those like 2.5 volumes, that might be like some of the best JoJo of like the whole series. That might be some of the best in the, like, I'm not kidding. It is such a high point. That arc is incredible. That like 10 chapter arc with vitamin C and the fucking walking hard and everything. It's so good. It's so good. I had to take a break after reading that. I was like, okay. Because that's right after that is Milagro Man, which is the like halfway marker, really. That's the barrier between like the first half and the second half. So I'm probably going to delve into that today. Anyway, I'll see you later with I don't know what my next video is going to be about. Actually, I do have a good idea of what my next video is going to be about. Until then, thank you so much for listening, if you've listened this far. If you have a question, feel free to leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. I'll be back next week and just keep your eyes peeled for I don't know, whatever. Bye.